Welcome back to another edition of 101 Sports and the first episode of the semester. I'm Gray Aust.
I'm Jack Nuttall.
And today we'll be covering college football,
NFL football,
Formula One,
and it all starts right now.
Welcome back to 101 Sports. Let's get things started off with the quick hitters. And Jack, the return of McKenzie Milton.
The return.
Talk to me.
He looked good. He came in the fourth quarter because Jordan Travis lost his shoe, and he came in and hit a 20-yard bomb. And you know what? They decided to keep him in there, and they should have. The third quarter, they got blown up. Notre Dame scored like three touchdowns in a row, and FSU was just not, and they were not looking good. And needed to pick me up, and all of a sudden, McKenzie Milton, he's back. He is back, and he's better than ever. He looked really good. Confident in the pocket, cool in the pocket. He even scrambled a little bit. I think he really impressed, and I think he even impressed enough where you need to have the QB1 debate. Jordan Travis or McKenzie Milton. They're both good quarterbacks. I mean, both have positive and negatives to them, but I really think that the QB1 debate is now back on. I think he showed enough on Sunday. Monday? Monday.
I think it was Monday.
Monday. He showed enough on Monday, for sure.
It was on Monday.
To consider QB1. What do you think?
But I mean, McKenzie Milton, I mean, poor guy. He's basically like the Alex Smith of college football right now. I mean, that terrible injury. Has to transfer away from UCF, ends up at Florida State. And Jordan Travis, who you mentioned is the QB1, comes out 9 of 19 with 3 interceptions, did throw 2 touchdowns, ran for 1 as well. But I mean, I think you got to have that serious debate now. I mean, they're playing Jacksonville State this weekend, not exactly a top-tier opponent. But I mean, do you throw McKenzie Milton in there to, start that game? Because, Jordan Travis just did not look good. As you mentioned, he came in, they were down 10, they needed that spark, and McKenzie Milton gives them a spark, and it gives them a nice talking point. And I mean, 18 unanswered points in the fourth quarter, and some of that has to go to McKenzie Milton.
Oh, definitely. And they should have won that game. I think we'd be talking about this a lot differently if the kicker had made some kicks. I think we're looking at this a lot differently because they didn't win. If they had win, I think McKenzie Milton gets a lot more support for his efforts. But because they lost, I think he doesn't get the shine. But it's still good to have him back. I mean, he just looked great on some Monday, and hopefully he can continue to play well during the rest of the year. Now with Osaka recently losing in the U.S. Open, we have a more, on-topic debate of mental health with her and Simone Biles and everyone out with the Olympics. What's your take on this?
I mean, Naomi Osaka, big fan of hers. I mean, she's won, I think, 4 majors, something like that, and had some pretty disappointing, finishes in the U.S. Open, as well as, I believe it was the French Open as well, bounced in the third round both times. But, I'm all for mental health, but at some point as an athlete, you kind of have to draw the line. Like, you're a world-class athlete. That's going to come with the territory. I think, she wants the world-class, she's a world-class athlete, but I just don't think she wants, the world-class, recognition. There's so much pressure that goes along with it. And so, I mean, if she needs to, step away because she needs to, work on her mental health, I definitely think she needs to do that. But I definitely think, it comes with the territory of being a world-class athlete.
Oh, of course. There's definitely a line you have to draw. I remember the comments from Jim Harbaugh a couple years ago about not letting players could practice because of mental health. I feel like the talk around mental health has grown into more a positive stance, which is, I think, great and appreciative. And I'm hoping that this talk can continue down the course of the next couple of years. I mean, we've seen athletes like Kevin Love, DeMar DeRozan, Mark Andrews all come out and say, hey, I have mental illnesses and I live with them every day. But you're right. That's part of being an athlete. It's every day you're on the news, you're in the news, you need to be aware of what you're saying and what you're doing. And it's definitely there comes with the territory. There's a fine line that needs to be drawn, and I think we're working towards that. But it's definitely the right direction for sure. I
mean, I definitely think, she came out with an interview after the third round loss, and she said, she doesn't feel happy when she wins. It's more, of just a straight up relief. And I think if she's at that point to where it's almost like it's not, fun anymore, she definitely, needs to take a step away. But heading over to the football pitch, the U.S. international break, 5 points from 3 matches for the U.S. international team. And Jack, me and you, we're both big soccer guys. What did you see out of the U.S. men's national team?
Well, I think looking at this now, I feel a lot differently after last night than I would have before last night. 2 draws, El Salvador and Canada, 0-0, 1-1. Not great games. I didn't think they looked all particularly well defensively or offensively. I thought they were kind of stagnant offense, just in general. And then to come out yesterday with a 4-1 win against Honduras is a really good, nice sign. They went down 1-0 in the first half and came back and scored 4 straight goals in the second half. They looked a lot better, and I think, honestly, just after this win, I think I have a lot more confidence. As you said, 5 points in 3 games is better because after Mexico also drew, so they're at 7 points in the leading. But I would say if we had 3 draws or 2 draws and a loss, I would feel a lot more worried than I am right now.
I mean, definitely on track with there. I mean, just like what you said, like after 2 matches, I was kind of, a little iffy. And I got that notification. It was like, oh, we're down 1-0 at half. I was like, oh, goodness, no, this can't be happening. But, we came back. I think the substitutions of Brendan Aronson coming on and Anthony Robinson. I think Anthony Robinson needs to be our starting left back.
I agree.
Put Serginho Dest at right back, where he naturally is. But those, more attacking substitutions from Greg Berhalter. I'm definitely more confident in the team, going into these next games against Jamaica, Panama, Costa Rica in mid-October than I would be if, we had another draw. We'd be sitting at 3 points and not in that top 3. Yeah. But, I mean, I definitely have more confidence in the U.S. men's national team, but also Weston McKennie. Come on, man.
Yeah, that was, I was going to mention him. He's on my list, man. That was like breaking the bubble. Like, we're still in COVID times. You can't be doing that. Like, your responsibility. Like, you're one of the veterans on this U.S. team. You got to be better than that. You can't be doing that. And he's sent him home early, which I agree. Like, he messed up. I mean, he did not look good, so unfortunate.
It's like you're the starting midfielder, man. Come on.
Exactly. Well, we heard today that both Gus Edwards and Marcus Peters potentially tore their ACLs on back-to-back plays in practice, plus missing Justice Hill from Achilles tendon tear and J.K. Dobbins for ACL tear. What do you think the Ravens will look like on offense this year? I mean, it sounds like they need to fire their trainer for one thing, but I mean, losing your backup running back, who is now your starting running back, and then losing Marcus Peters, who's arguably one of the best cornerbacks in the National Football League, and losing him, I mean, they're just dropping like flies. They're like the 2020-ers. They lost all those guys on the defensive side to injuries. Is it maybe like the turf? I don't know. I don't know, but I mean, the Ravens, back after, I think it was like 2001, first season of Hard Knocks, they lost Jamal Lewis. They had to, go find some running backs off the street. And that's basically what they're doing at this point, because you lose not your first-tier running back or your second-tier running back, but even Justice Hill. He tore his Achilles, and he was their third-string running back. And so I believe they signed Devontae Freeman to go along with Le'Veon Bell. And I mean, I'm not confident. I mean, if this was 2017, yeah, I'd be confident in them. But I mean, running a read option offense out of those two, I just don't see it. And their only other running back is Tyson Williams, is an undrafted free agent out of BYU. He has 0 career snaps. And then behind Marcus Peters is Anthony Everett, 7 starts in 3 years, and the guy, Jimmy Smith. Great cornerback, but he gets injured all the time, so I'm a little bit worried about their secondary moving forward. I think they can get torn up because Marvin Humphreys and Peters were the best 1-2 in the business. And I mean, just the Ravens, I mean. It's unfortunate. It's just unfortunate, but I really think that means the Browns are pretty much locked. We should give a shout out to Andrew Vandellis. We're thinking about you and your team. Andrew, we're thinking about you and your team here on 101 Sports. But that's going to do it here for the Quick Hitters. We'll be right back with some college football. Early September in the Carolinas means only one thing. College football is back. And here on episode 1, we're going to be discussing some college football, joined alongside Mason Willett and Bryson Burns. And Mason, I'm going to go to you first. A lot of quarterbacks showed out in week 1. If you could break it down to 3, which ones are you picking? I mean, for my first quarterback, I really like this kid. People will say it was a kind of bad game for him, but Spencer Rattler from Oklahoma, I feel like he's leading this number 4 Oklahoma team right now, and they just look so good. Compared to last year, they won 8 straight games last season, and won the Big 12 title, finishing the season 9-2. And then his stats from last year, 3,000 yards, 28 touchdowns, and he rushed for 6 touchdowns. I mean, he's just all around a great QB, and he's only a sophomore. So. I mean, he struggled a lot against Tulane, especially in that second half. I mean, I'm a fan of the Green Wave, don't get me wrong, but I mean, it's Tulane. If you're Oklahoma and you're ranked number 4, you should not be struggling against Tulane. That's why my number 1 overall, at least so far, is Bryce Young. He is a first-time starter, but he looked like a veteran in the backfield for them. I mean, he threw for 344 yards and 4 touchdowns. Let me tell you, that 94-yard touchdown pass midway through the third, because we're in the South, and that, as they would say, that looked really purty. That looked purty out there. There you go. And so I think, even though he looks like a veteran quarterback, even though he's only started 1 game, I think he's definitely the top quarterback so far going into the 2021 season. There's also this guy, Ole Miss QB, Matt Corral. He's only a junior. He threw for 381 yards last week, 1 touchdown, and rushed 55 yards for another touchdown. He is the best quarterback I've seen in a while. And this guy, the Rebels head coach, Lane Kiffin, absolutely let Corral loose back in 2020, and I think he's going to continue to let him get loose this year. All right, before I get to my number 2, as a Tennessee fan,
the word Lane Kiffin, that just does not go well with me at all. I just want y'all to know that. But my number 2 quarterback, I know. My number 2 quarterback would be Dorian Thompson-Robinson for the UCLA Bruins. He didn't throw a lot against LSU because they mainly relied on their rushing attack, but when they needed him to throw, he delivered. He threw for 260 yards and for 3 touchdowns, and he made a great duo with that tight end, Greg Dulcich. So he looked really good for the Bruins. He looked good last season, but a lot of people overlooked him because UCLA only played 6 games because of the COVID schedule. So it's great to see that he took another step up again, and it looks like to me, honestly, that under Chip Kelly, that UCLA may finally be back and may actually be the dark horse to win a Pac-12 title this year.
UCLA has been looking very well to start off this season, but I got number 3 is Malik Willis from Liberty. He put on a show last year. The transfer from Auburn has just, even though he's had a roundabout college career to date, but he's just been great all around. He's got that rushing attack. He's got passing. Just like last year, 2,260 yards passing, 20 touchdowns, rushed for 944 yards and 14 rushing touchdowns. That is great play from that QB. And that team last year went 10-1. So this year, I don't know. He looks like a first-round pick to me.
So my number 3 quarterback would be Desmond Ridder from Cincinnati. In my opinion, he's probably the best Group of 5 quarterback that we've seen so far. He did really well last year. He's a 4-year starter. You know, he stepped up when he needed to. He stepped up in that Georgia game when they went to that New Year's Six Bowl. And I think Cincinnati's definitely the favorite to go to a New Year's Six Bowl again as the Group of 5 team. He threw for 295 yards and 4 touchdowns against Miami of Ohio, which I know that's kind of, not that impressive against a team like that, to be fair. But still, I think Cincinnati, under him, they're going to do great. And he's also a great dual-threat quarterback because he also had 31 yards rushing and a touchdown rush as well against Miami of Ohio.
And so looking at both your lists, there are 2 names that are severely lacking from it. I mean, you have DJ Uiagalelei at Clemson and from down the road, Sam Howell at UNC. And that's going to be our next topic right now is who worries you the most right now? Like, if you're a fan right now, are you pressing the panic button on Clemson or UNC? And Bryson, I'm going to go to you first. Which loss worries you more?
I would say, honestly, Clemson. I know that may surprise y'all because they played a very good Georgia team, but they just have too many question marks on the offensive side of the football. Since you brought them up, first I'll go ahead and say DJ did not look comfortable in the pocket at all. The same problems that he had against Notre Dame in 2020 rose back up again against Georgia. He was not looking good at his reads. He couldn't find an open man. And when things started to go right, it seemed to all fall apart every single time. And that was definitely seen when he threw that pick 6 in the second quarter. And their offensive line didn't look good. They couldn't get their rushing attack going because they don't have that Travis Etienne type running back like they did last season. And so I think just overall, because of how just kind of terrible their offense looked against Georgia, they only produced 180 yards. I just think that personally that there's just so many question marks that were not answered against Georgia that if I were a Clemson fan, I'd be kind of sweating in my boots right now.
See, I had to go in a different route here. I chose UNC. They just did not look the part against Virginia Tech. I mean, it's hard going into Lane Stadium against that team, but Sam Howell looked hopeless. He was a homeless man out there and could not get anything done on the offensive side of the ball. He got 3 interceptions, got sacked 6 times. The man has no legs to his game either. He can't even get out of the pocket to save his life. It is ridiculous. And Virginia Tech went into halftime up 14-0, held on to the whole game after that. And the Tar Heels only had the ball in the first half for 9 minutes and 11 seconds. It is completely ridiculous to ever think that they were preseason ranked number 10. How did they come in like that after losing all those pieces last year? It was absurd. And now they're right where they belong, probably even lower than this. I don't think they should be ranked after what they did on Saturday last week or Friday.
And I mean, you look at UNC right now specifically. I mean, they're down the road from us, but I mean, you lose your 2 best running backs. You lose Javonte Williams and Michael Carter to the NFL. You lose Daz Newsome and De'Ami Brown as well to the NFL, but they were projected higher than they were last season. I mean, do you think UNC is just, do you think they're all hype?
Personally, to me, I think they are. I said that the Clemson loss was worse than the UNC loss, but honestly, anyone that thought that UNC was going to be a national championship this year, they were kind of delusional. I really hate to say it. In my opinion, that UNC just did not have it, and I just think they were a little overhyped. Don't get me wrong; they're still a great ACC school, and they're definitely there's still an obvious way that they could get to the conference championship game. But just being ranked in the top 10 week 1, especially after that performance, I just don't understand that, in my opinion.
And I just think UNC could do a whole lot better, but just coming from last year to this year, I don't know what the people saw in them. I know Sam Howell was supposed to be the best quarterback. He just does not fit that part, and I think he's very overhyped right now.
I mean, do you think he just was better, a lot better under the radar when he had those weapons, and now that he doesn't, it's kind of like, show us how good of a quarterback you are, and he just fell up short against VTech?
I think he had great pieces last year, and that really hid what he actually had to do. And when you have pieces like those 2 running backs, you can hand it off to them, give short passes to them, give a ton of yards, stats. He looked a whole lot better with that high-caliber offense last year.
All right, so we've seen, week 1. Now we're going to go ahead and look toward week 2. What is the matchup that you guys are, really looking forward to? Like, the game comes on. What are you looking for?
Well, the game I'm going to be looking for is definitely the Oregon versus Ohio State matchup. Both these teams did not look that great. In week 1, Oregon struggled against Fresno State, and Ohio State struggled against Minnesota. But I think it'll be a very good matchup just because they'll be able to tell, was either team overhyped or was it just kind of a fluke week 1? Ohio State has C.J. Stroud, the freshman starter, and he honestly looked pretty good against Minnesota, but Ohio State definitely has to clean up their defense on the defensive side of the football. And Oregon, they're going to be good like they are pretty much every season, but they just kind of have to they have to get over that kind of slump that they saw in most of the game against Fresno State.
And it'll be very interesting to see how C.J. Stroud does as a freshman quarterback going up against probably the hardest team he will face all season this year. But for my game to watch this week, it's obviously the primetime game this weekend, and it's Iowa State versus Iowa. This is a high-key matchup between number 9 and number 10. The Hawkeyes just jumped from number 18 to number 10 after crushing Indiana last week, 34-6, while the Cyclones come into this week going 2 spots down to number 9 after barely escaping Northern Iowa, 16-10. This will be a big test for the head coach, Matt Campbell, to see how far the Cyclones have come under him. And Matt Campbell has not beat Iowa ever since coming to Iowa State, and that is a very interesting point to make. And then this is also the second time in history that the Cyclones have come into this matchup ranked. The first time they ever came into this matchup ranked was 1978.
Should be a very exciting weekend of college football on the gridiron. So we'll be right back here. We'll go to more of the professional gridiron as we'll have Tobias and Connor Witzow to break down the NFL. With NFL Week 1 upon us, might as well break down some pro football here on 101 Sports. I'm here with Tobias, and joining us once again after a long stay in the California desert, Connor Witzow has returned here on 101 Sports. And guys, NFL Week 1 is back, starts Thursday. We're going to focus more things on teams playing on Sunday. We can talk about the Chiefs, we can talk about the Buccaneers, but Tobias, I'm going to go to you first. Who is your dark horse contender this season?
So I have the Vikings as a dark horse contender. Their defense last year was 32nd, so it has to get better. And Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, and Dalvin Cook are some nice weapons. But Kirk Cousins has to stay healthy with COVID and with real injuries because they have no backup.
And I mean, talking about the division specifically, I mean, you got Detroit Lions, they got a new quarterback.
Right.
Green Bay, everybody knows about the mess that's going on in Green Bay, Wisconsin right now. And you got the Bears, who, are also a little bit of an iffy team. Sorry. But they're a little bit of an iffy team. What do you see about the Vikings in that division?
So I see they have a head coach, Mike Zimmer. He's been there a while. He knows what he's doing. I don't trust the Bears to do the right thing. In fact, I trust them to do the wrong thing. And then I think the Vikings can play up with the Packers and maybe steal a game from them and then win the division.
I like it. And Connor, I know you're a longtime Bears fan. Please don't tell me you're going to go with the Bears.
Lord, please don't let me jinx this, but yes, I am going with the Bears, and let me put some logic into it. There's a little bit of logic. I'm not going with them because they're my favorite team. In fact, that would be an incentive to not, because then I feel like I'm going to jinx it, which I very well might. But the Bears have Justin Fields this year. They've added a few more good players to their team. They still have that great defense that has helped them in the past. Now, have they stuttered? For sure. But if that defense can keep up generally what they've done in the past, they should be a lot harder to beat this year. Now, then there's Andy Dalton. As long as the Bears do not play Andy Dalton for the majority of the season, they will do well. And I kind of want to comment on his thing on the Vikings, like the right thing to do. Come on. The Vikings have had a team that has made it to the playoffs year after year, and they can't seem to get past the first or second round. The only, I think, significant thing I can remember is the Minneapolis Miracle, where literally the dude ducked, jumped over, got it in there. I don't see how the Vikings make a big splash this year. In fact, I see the Lions doing a better job than the Vikings.
You have the Lions as better than the Vikings right now?
They got a better quarterback, in my opinion.
Okay, but the rest of the team the Lions are not good. They have a tight ends coach as their head coach. He's not a good coach.
New England Patriots are considered a good team, but without a good quarterback, they don't do squat.
Yeah, but Mac Jones is better than Kirk Cousins and Jared Goff. Like, the Pats have a good quarterback.
And so, you guys talk about your dark horse teams. Let's take a road, almost into the graveyard. Who's going to be your most disappointing team? And Connor, I'm going to go to you first because you better have a pretty darn good explanation for this.
So my disappointing team is the Washington football team. I am so sorry, Gray. And literally, as I was looking through all the teams, who am I going to go for most disappointing? I chose with Washington football team. I was like, man, Gray, I'm going to feel bad about this. But here's why. Ron Rivera's defense. I've got no doubts about that. Perfect. Their front line, I think anybody would want that front line.
It's phenomenal.
In front of their quarterback. The problem, y'all don't have a quarterback. You got Fitzpatrick, which he can be good, but there's those times where he's throwing picks like it's Christmas. Mm-hmm. You get a pick. You get a pick. You get a pick. Everybody gets picks. Why don't you just take it halfway down the field while you're at it? And if that happens, y'all don't have a lot of options to go with. Like, y'all got Kyle Allen, and nobody wants to see Kyle Allen. Buffalo can tell you that for sure. Mm-hmm. That's why I got the Washington football team. So now you got some hope, but it's all relying on Fitzpatrick not messing up continuously.
So who was Washington football team's quarterback last year? Because I believe there was 5, and we went 7-9 and won the division. So I mean, if you have an upgraded quarterback and you still have the same defense with a division that still kind of sucks, how can they be a most disappointing team when they're favored to win the division?
They won the division with a losing record. And I don't count a losing record as like being good when you're going into the playoffs because you're going to get smoked in the first round.
I mean, we did play the Buccaneers and we were only 8 points, but I mean, you would know it's sucking being a Bears fan. So I mean,
he made this personal, dang.
So who's going to be your most disappointing team?
All right, I have the Cardinals. I don't think their head coach is very good. He didn't win in college with Mahomes, and then he went to the NFL and still hasn't won. That division is brutal. They have the Niners, the Rams, and there's another really good team, and I'm blanking on them right now. But it's 3 really good teams in that division, and I think they're all going to beat up on the Cardinals.
I mean, the Seahawks, I think, was the team you were mentioning for. But I mean, that division, I mean, I want both of you guys' takes on that. I mean, is there a better division in football than the NFC West right now?
No, definitely not.
Not a chance?
No.
So will we see then, 3 NFC West teams make that expanded wild card format? Do you think that's going to happen?
I think so. I do think the Cardinals would make the playoffs in any other division. But there's 3 teams that I think are miles better than them in their division, so they're just kind of in a bad spot.
I'm going to stick with my team, but I definitely agree with you on the Cardinals. Like, yeah, they made moves for their quarterback position. They made moves to get Watts, which is great. But at the same time, I do agree. The Niners are better. The Seahawks have always naturally been not the best team in the division, but a relatively good team.
They're always in the mix.
Yes, exactly. And then you've got the Rams, you got the Rams. I got no chance with the Cardinals going against them.
And so, we've seen dark horse teams, we've seen the most disappointing team, but now let's bring it to, more recent here. We got a few good Week 1 matchups. We're going to go to you first, Tobias. Who's that best Week 1 matchup?
So I have the Saints against the Packers. I think it's going to be interesting to see how the Saints play without Drew Brees. Obviously, he retired. They had to cut a lot of players to get under the salary cap, so I want to see if their team's any good. And I also want to see if Jameis has stopped throwing as many interceptions, because that's always been his issue. And then Aaron Rodgers had a ton of uncertainty in Green Bay. They didn't know if he was going to come back, and I want to see how that plays out this year.
I mean, we might see a last dance kind of format, but also you got to take in that account. I mean, they're playing the game in Jacksonville, right? So, I mean,
Right.
New Orleans isn't really going to have a home field advantage. How do you think that's going to play out for them?
I think I don't think it's really going to matter a ton, because I don't think it's just a further flight for Green Bay. Like New Orleans, it's pretty close, so kind of a home game, just not really.
Just not. Yeah, I get you. So who's going to be your best Week 1 matchup, Connor?
While I did see Green Bay versus New Orleans as a really good one, I was just like, oh man, I'm gonna go with the Browns and the Chiefs because I am super excited about this Browns new defense going against the Chiefs offense. The Browns are hungry. Like, you can feel it in Cleveland. They want to win. And what better way to start off the season with trying to just crush the best offense in the NFL. At the same time, they gave the Chiefs alone in last year in the playoffs without this defense for this year. They gave them a run for their money. Now, they were not able to get that touchdown that they needed in the fourth quarter. Good props to the Chiefs. But I think this is a much better team this year. And the Browns still have that relatively good offense with Mayfield and I'm blanking on Odell.
Odell, Jarvis Landry, Nick Chubb.
Yeah, all of the above.
All of the above.
Anyone that's in the backfield, you're pretty much going to get a good call for.
And so that's going to be all the time we have here from the professional gridiron. Next, we're going to take over the racetrack and cover some F1 here on 101 Sports. We're headed over to the European racetrack as here on episode 1. We're going to be covering some F1 in here. Joining me on this one-on-one block is Teddy Morgan. And Teddy, Max Verstappen here in the Dutch Grand Prix really took it away, and that is going to be a very tight race now between Mercedes and Red Bull. Tell me a little about what's going on.
Yeah, Red Bull's got a 3-point lead in the Drivers' Championship. Verstappen's up by 3. I think it's 224.5 points. Got the half points from the Belgian Grand Prix with the rained out races, but it's tight. This is first time, seems like, that Hamilton's actually got competition since Vettel in around 2016. He's got the competition, and Verstappen's ready. I think he's capable of doing it. He's in the lead right now, and back-to-back victories, I think he's got it in the bag.
And so, for those who don't really know about F1, you mentioned, you have the racers, but you also have the teams. Could you explain what the difference is between the two?
So each team, there's 10 teams in Formula One, and each team has 2 racers, and each team is sponsored by either a driving company, so a car company, or Red Bull is also another sponsor. Williams is the last of the family teams owned by families and such, but that's in the old era, and now Williams will be becoming a new team in 2022.
Okay, so there was big news right here in F1 that even I heard about because I don't really watch F1, but George Russell is not going to be partnering with Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes. What does that mean, for the whole of F1 that he's going to be Lewis Hamilton's new partner in 2022?
George Russell, since his debut in 2019, he's been destined for this spot. He's been in this spot since his debut with Williams in 2019. His last 3 years, last year he got a test when Lewis Hamilton had COVID, and he thrived in that role, didn't end up with points in those races, but he thrived in that role. He was successful, although he crashed in the race. And this year he got his first podium in the Belgian Grand Prix with a second place finish, despite the rain, through his qualifying. But I think he will be very successful, even more successful than Valtteri Bottas in his years in Mercedes.
And so you mentioned Mercedes and you mentioned Red Bull, and they're basically way far ahead in the I believe it's Constructors' Cup standings. Yes. Do you think anybody's going to be able to catch them, or is it just a two-horse race at this point?
Oh, it's definitely a two-headed race. There's no one close. I think Ferrari is closer than they have been in previous years. They're closer to what they used to be, but they're nowhere close to those top 2 teams. I think Ferrari will finish 3rd, but I don't think there's anyone close to the top 2 teams.
And so there's going to be a race upcoming this Sunday. It's going to be September 12th, Italian Grand Prix. Who do you see taking that race in terms of team or, in terms of racer individually?
I mean, the popular pick is Charles Leclerc. He's the Frenchman. But it's an Italian company. He's driving for Ferrari. Fans want to see it, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think Verstappen is going to win this one again, 3 straight in a row.
And so do you think Verstappen's going to hold out and he's going to win the whole thing and break this streak that Lewis Hamilton's on?
I do. I think he's going to. It's been since 2014 that Mercedes has had a driver that's won. Hamilton has won every year of those, but 2016. And I just think Verstappen's capable of doing it. He's been up to this par level for years. He's been in the top 3 for about 3 years, and I just think he's got it. He's got what it takes.
And if you could make an American sports comparison, who Lewis Hamilton is, because I believe he's the greatest driver in F1 history, and you have Verstappen, who's the new and upcoming guy. If you could relate those to two football players or basketball players, who would they compare to?
I would say that Lewis Hamilton is similar to LeBron. He's 36, soon to be 37 in January for the next season. He's been considering retirement since COVID took a lot out of him, but I think for Verstappen, I think it's probably Giannis Antetokounmpo. He's new. Verstappen's new. He's been in the sport for about 4 years or so. They're similar in age, and he's just got what it takes. And I think, like Giannis, he's going to claim the throne.
I am a Suns fan, so that's going to be a little bit of a tough pill to swallow still, but that's going to do it here with Teddy Morgan here, talking about the racetrack and F1. We'll be right back here on 101 Sports. Thank you for watching another edition of 101 Sports.
Don't forget to follow us on YouTube and hit the notification bell.
And make sure you're following us on Twitter and on Instagram at 101 Sports.
And we will see you next week.
Just toss it.